What's up, YouTube? I'm Static in the Attic. Welcome back. Let's get into it. So we're going to go through the history of music, all right? The history, the historia, the narrative, the finding out, okay? So we're going to start with music right here. What you're looking at, those 6 dots represent all of the music for the Western world throughout all history. We got London, Paris, Salzburg, Vienna, St. Petersburg, and Moscow. And now let me tell you something. Since I dumped my first videos last weekend, I've been having all kinds of problems with my computer. I've been trying to record this video for 4 days now, and I first recorded it. I uploaded it to YouTube for about an hour, and the audio was horrible and all messed up. But let me show you what happened after I uploaded this video. So this is what's up right now. All right, this is all the great composers of all time that's up right now. And go ahead and look at all those dates, okay? So when I originally did this video, this was the list. So this is still the list that we're going off of because those are the tabs that I've got up. But let me show you what happened the day after I posted my video and then took it back down. When you typed in great composers, this is the list that came up, all right? Do you guys recognize any of those names? When you think of the great composers, Mozart, Beethoven, all those guys. You see any of those names? And also, look at all the dates of these, all right? That falls right in the middle of the long 18th century, which we'll get to in a minute. So, like I said, I'm going to go through this list. This guy's from the 60s. We're going to go down this list right here, and let's examine what we were actually taught in school. And I'm making this video so that you can show all your friends, say, hey, this guy's Static over here, he's just going through history. This is just documented history. I'm not throwing in any conspiracy theories. Just, this is history, guys. This is what we were all taught. So let's start with Ludwig van Beethoven. So he was 1770 to 1827. Beethoven was born in Bonn, then the capital of the Electorate of Cologne and part of the Holy Roman Empire. Now, I can't scroll up and get the whole picture there, but look at the coat of arms for the Holy Roman Empire there. All right. And in 1811, he gave up conducting and performing in public, but continued to compose. Next on the list, Joseph Haydn, considered the father of symphony and the father of the string quartet from 1732 until 1809. He was a friend and mentor of Mozart, a tutor of Beethoven, and the older brother of composer Michael Haydn. All right? So at this point, I want to point out the long 18th century. Now, the long 18th century is a phrase used by many British historians to cover a more natural historical period than the simple use of standard calendar definition. They expand the century to include larger British historical moments with their subsequent long 18th century, typically running from the Glorious Revolution of 1688 to the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. Napoleon. Okay, so let me tell you some other interesting facts about the long 18th century. Evidently, the Gregorian calendar took 300 years to fully implement, but it finally went into effect in 1752. Peter the Great of Russia was 1682 to 1725. The Great Fire of London was 1666, or I-666. There's your 666, guys. It's all just one big joke to these guys. They know what they're talking about when they say the 666. The Chicago World's Fair, coincidentally, I'm going to throw in right here, was in 1883. There's a reason I'm throwing this in. You'll learn later. All right, but the Chicago World's Fair was 1893, and then the Olympic Games started in 1896 and have run every 4 years ever since. So the Chicago World Fair, they built up this huge, great place. I should have pulled up the picture, just to throw a party and then tear it down. And they've been doing it every 4 years, ever since, going into countries that are broke, spending billions of dollars on the Olympic Village, and then having these really weird opening ceremonies, rituals, and then they tear it all down, spend billions of dollars, hurt the local economy, don't care at all. It's all one big joke to these guys. The Great Plague of London was 1665 to 1666, wink wink. Again, I-666. The Great Plague of Vienna, 1679. Now, during the 16th and 17th centuries, the plague visited Paris for almost 1 out of every 3 years. They just couldn't seem to shake that bug. It just kept coming back and killing everybody. But coincidentally, the old Burg Theater of Vienna, which I hope I have pulled up somewhere, was constructed. This is the old theater over here. So this was constructed in 1741 and was the creation of Maria Theresa, the Empress of the House of Habsburg, which we'll get to in a minute. Also, the German National Theater was built in 1776. All this happened in the middle of the long 18th century. Now let's get back to music. Oh, there's the old Burg Theater. All right. So they just built this, and look how it's just nestled right in the middle of everything. It doesn't look like it's brand new or anything. Franz Schubert, 1797 to 1829, Austrian composer. Oh, I've been meaning to throw in where all these guys composed. Let's see here. So Schubert, where was he at? I think this was the guy that I couldn't find any live performances from. He was just a composer. But let's go back here real quick. So Vienna for Beethoven. And obviously Vienna, because these guys were all friends. All right, let's keep going. So George Gershwin, he was an American, 1898 to 1937. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, 1756 to 1791, right in the middle of the long 18th century. And this guy was a genius. He died at 35 years old, and he tutored Mozart and Beethoven, and he wrote all of his great works, and then died by the age of 35. And then Joseph Haydn, that I mentioned a minute ago, said, "Posterity will not see such a talent again for 100 years." You're very right on that. He's an old world dude. Peter Ilyich Tchaikovsky. Now he was 1840 to 1893. St. Petersburg Conservatory, that fine piece of architecture you see there. And during Tchaikovsky's time, the Russian culture exhibited a split personality, with its native and its adopted elements having drifted apart increasingly since the time of Peter the Great in the 1680s. This resulted in uncertainty among the intelligentsia. So also during this time frame, it was also called the Enlightenment era that dominated Western thinking, okay? So, interesting thing about Mr. Tchaikovsky is there's a town named Tchaikovsky on a map dated 1659 in the great nation of Tartaria that everybody's looking for and nobody seems to be able to find, but we still have the accepted naval flags of the countries from the 19th century, which show Tartaria being a close personal friend with China. China just has the extra little ribbon around the edge of their flag. And then I want you to notice Japan's flag. See, at this time, Japan was not the house of the rising sun for one great nation, one new world order that spread all across Europe and all across Asia. They weren't the easternmost house of the rising sun yet because they were the holdouts. We'll get to that at a later date. Now, Igor Fyodorovich Stravinsky. He was from 1882 to 1971. And Mr. Stravinsky, he wrote in Ukraine and Switzerland, and then he finally performed in France, okay? Now, Mr. Stravinsky ended up dying in this urban sprawl of a house in Los Angeles, California in the 70s. Sergei Rachmaninoff, 1873 to 1943, another Russian composer. He played the Moscow Conservatory, and he went on to die here in his house in Beverly Hills, California. So let's go back to the maps for a second. So these are all the greats, all from the same time period at these 6 dots. This is where they performed. That was it. That's our whole history of music. Throughout all times, we got nothing for this whole landmass, and we got nothing out of Africa because we know black people don't like music. I mean, it was just a one-off, B.B. King, Aretha Franklin, Chuck Berry, Stevie Wonder, all of rap music, all of R&B, all of hip-hop. Black folks just don't like music, all right? Yeah, that's believable, right? So, let's get in to the static history lesson of the day. By the 4th century, the Visigoths of Germany were so great in number that they overthrew the entire Roman Empire, not the Holy Roman Empire, the Roman Empire. And evidently they burned all the instruments and they burned all the sheet music, or the plague was just so bad that if you got in the same room as any of these things, you died. So, I mean, then it was just obvious that you needed to just get rid of music. It was, the work of the devil. All right. Now, these Visigoths were capable of all of this great artwork that you see in front of you. I mean, this is some pretty impressive stuff here. But it never occurred to them to make any instruments and write any songs and have any big parties in town. It just wasn't their thing. They just weren't into it at all. Just no music. Didn't like it. All right? But then in 1737, Antonio Stradivari cut down a tree, cured the maple, and crafted this priceless piece of art known as the Stradivarius violin. And he did it just in time for all the greats. In 1802, Beethoven, prodigy of Mozart, and close personal friend of Joseph Haydn, gave his first public performance in the Berg Theater. Now, this is a picture of Vienna. Early 19th century, the time of all of the great musicians that we've heard of. Look at all of the throngs of people coming into town to see the greatest musicians the world has ever known. Just look at all of the people just lining up all around the block. And look at this big, huge, magnificent church here. Just look at the architecture of that. So they just slapped that together, and then people started making instruments, and then, everybody was just dumb up until the middle of the long 18th century, and then they were capable of building big, huge works of art like this in this whole city. and producing the most renowned musicians the world has ever seen. And obviously you can see that people came from all around the world to see this. And don't forget that, you know, by 1880, people literally were traveling all around the world to come to the Chicago World's Fair. So guys, where are all the people here? All right? Where are the people? More will be revealed. So let's get into the House of Habsburg here. Now, the House of Habsburg, also called the House of Austria, was one of the most influential and distinguished royal houses in Europe. The throne of the Holy Roman Empire was continuously occupied by the Habsburgs from 1438 until their extinction in the male line in 1740. So these guys ruled over this whole area of modern day Germany all the way down to Italy. And for 300 years, they hated music. No music whatsoever came out of this time. But you better believe that they've got their bloodlines all the way back to Charlemagne. And I'll discuss Charlemagne at another time, all right? But just look at this. You want to talk about a family of overachievers. King of the Romans, Holy Roman Empire. I mean, you do not want to go to Christmas at this household. Trust me. King of Spain, Holy Roman. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. All right? Now, I've been showing you this double-headed eagle all through this, and for a reason. And I got to throw this in here. Coincidentally, after I first tried to post my video 4 days ago, and then all of the great composers of all time suddenly got changed on Google, New Earth released a video yesterday concerning the double-headed eagle. Now, that would be pretty coincidental if it stood alone. But a couple of weeks ago, Martin Leake over at Flat Earth British, he said, wow, Sylvie's just psychic, because I was just researching this subject and then she came out with the same thing on the same day. So now I'm really starting to wonder what's going on with that. And I'm just going to leave that right there. Anyway, so this is the coat of arms for the Holy Roman Empire, not the Roman Empire. All right? And let's see what else matches up with that. So let's look at the House of Habsburg coat of arms. Wow, a double-headed eagle. Now look, guys, this symbol is found all over the old world. And I'm calling it the old world for a reason. I'm not calling it the ancient world. I'm calling it the old world. All right? So I think these guys just adopted the symbol. And I think that, I think it's a good idea to wear a parachute when you jump out of an airplane. All right? So now let's see, this line and this coat of arms, they went extinct. They just disappeared in the 1740s. The most powerful people in all of Europe, well, not necessarily that. We'll get into more families later. But very, very powerful. These guys are the ones that are pretty much running the Holy Roman Empire, i.e. the Catholic Church, all the way to modern day. But they just mysteriously disappeared in the middle of the long 18th century. But let's see who else has this coat of arms. Well, the Freemasons, the Scottish Rite. All right, so right here I'm going to throw in that though historians believe the Knights Templar was disbanded in the 1300s, some groups in the long 18th century, most notably the Freemasons, revived their symbols, rituals, and coat of arms. Now, guys, I'm not going to come on YouTube and give you the seating arrangements at that big meeting that's held every year by all of the very rich and powerful elites that make all the plans for all of us minions. But if you guys want to know who's invited to the party, you guys can just look up the Sovereign Grand Commander here, and that's going to give you a good idea of, you know, families and, you know, who's part of the in crowd. Now, he's called the Sovereign Grand Commander for a reason, because he's still sovereign. All right? Him and his family enjoy diplomatic immunity all around the world. They can't be arrested for any crimes because they're still sovereign, and they are not subject to the tribunal courts that you and I are subject to. And that's because they have never been registered as citizen ships and don't have berthing documents by the doctors at the port of entry into this world, which these guys own all of the ports of entry into the world. It's real simple. The hospital is the port of entry. And if you've ever studied anatomy, you know, it's all blood vessels. And guys, you're just, you're property to these people. That's all there is to it. All right? Now let's follow this coat of arms a little bit further. Coat of arms of Russia. Coat of arms of Albania. Coat of arms of Montenegro. And let's go back to the maps. So you got Montenegro and Albania over here, and then all of Russia falls under this coat of arms of the House of Habsburg that mysteriously just disappeared in the middle of the long 18th century. Let me tell you, it was a long, long 18th century. Now, when these people die, they go to cemeteries like this right here, okay? That's a cemetery, guys. And then they bury their dead in mausoleums like this. All right? They had a lot of respect for their dead. Now, guys, I'm no genius. And I was duped too. All right? We all fell for it. You know, nobody's to be blamed here. Everybody was duped by this. Okay? Everybody was. And in later videos, we'll get into more detail about this. But I'm just starting this series of videos so that you can show your friends, hey, look, all the history that we have of everything started at the beginning of the 19th century. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to prove it time and time again. So guys, hit like, hit subscribe, stick around. I'm going somewhere with this. All right. So I'm going to end this with one of my favorite quotes of all time. This is from Mariam Williamson. And she writes, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Well, actually, who are you not to be? You're a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so other people won't feel insecure around you. We're all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. And it's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others." Guys, I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Much, much more to come. Take care of yourself out there. Love, peace. We are all one. Static out.